Good morning. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your nonprofit origin story?
Sure. Hi, I am Dan Drucker. I'm the founder and facilitator of Philanthropy Fuel. My nonprofit history is not really long. As you know, it's really only been about a year and a half since I made a decision to dive in and support the sector any way I could. I had spent about 3.5 decades in corporate B2B running sales and marketing for a division of Canon. Like a lot of people during the pandemic, I got very introspective, started thinking about what's next, what could be more fulfilling, and I decided to kind of hang it up and retire from corporate at the beginning of 2024, several years earlier than originally planned. So it was a little bit scary, but I knew I wanted to start something and set off the next phase of my life, but I didn't know exactly what that was going to be, other than I wanted to protect my retirement activities, more time with family, travel, getting outdoors, photography, volunteering. And as you know, I've been very active volunteer at a local animal shelter. So I looked into this whole nonprofit thing and I started networking, reading, learning, figuring out where I could help. I launched Philanthropy Fuel in August of 2024. And really, my first thought was that I'd be teaching fundraising and development teams the business development skills I knew could translate over from corporate B2B into fundraising. But what it morphed into almost by accident, helping out a couple of small international nonprofits that I connected with, one of them through the Hive, was helping these small nonprofits and mid-sized nonprofits just build deeper and more innovative corporate partnerships. And it's funny, in that year plus since I started, I've definitely had the thought many times about the impact I could have had and the fulfillment I could have gotten if I'd done this earlier.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way about volunteering, but you can't look back. You can only look forward. And it's an awesome sector. It's got incredible people. But I also think it's at a crossroads right now and change is needed. So I guess in a way, maybe I did get into this at the right time.
I think the sector is ready for some change in a way that a couple of years ago, like even when I entered into the nonprofit world, like it was funding has always been tough, but it was at least there was a little bit of consistency on a government angle for a lot of nonprofits that kind of bomb-proof them. Although some groups were already starting to talk about, hey, when the grant funding changes with regards to women's initiatives, what are we going to do? So like the conversations were starting, but holy man, things have really amped up. And I feel like you and I connected and you were transitioning out of your role. And I feel like you'd asked me, hey, can I start doing these chats? Like, I'm just new to the sector. I'm trying to connect with people who are doing this work. And I remember being very much like, oh, yay, another person who appreciates and knows what sales can do and sees the connection deeply between great personable salespeople and fundraisers. They're so in common. There's so much in common, right, between those groups, and so much that can be learned, I think, too, from those people who have sales backgrounds and vice versa, from fundraisers back to people who are in corporate sales.
Absolutely. It's so funny. Fundraisers hate, and I was warned about this, hate to hear and be compared
Yes.
to sales. Like they're just, oh, it's sales. But fundraisers will be the first one to hate the stereotype about fundraisers that all we are is people who ask for money. And the truth is,
Yeah.
when done right, and I wrote an article for the Hive, and I know you got very excited about the topic of B2B and how it can translate over. When done right, they're both really high level, built on connection, relationship building, not transactional, asking questions, empathy, looking for motivation. They're both very similar. And when done wrong, they're also both very similar,
Yeah.
when they get kind of gimmicky and transactional and just short term thinking. So I think there's just huge parallels between the two, and they could both learn from each other.
Absolutely. Totally agree. And when you think of what your favorite part has been since you've come into the sector, what would you say has been your favorite part of being in nonprofit work?
I got to say, Tasha, I am truly blown away by the passion and creativity of the people in the sector have for solving problems. I probably have whatever, three, four, five conversations every week, and many of them are with new contacts, and most of them are founders and leaders of small nonprofits. And every single time I learn something new. I mean, you've got your major buckets of problems in the world to solve, and we all know what those are: environmental, children, animals, underfunded communities, equality, women's issues, health, all that stuff, homelessness. But each organization comes at it slightly differently in ways that I didn't even know existed. I met a guy last year, Nigel Fisher, We just connected on LinkedIn. I sent him a video welcome and he was all excited to see that. So he's like, let's talk. And he's part of Guitars for Vets. Now, there's a lot of organizations that serve veterans in the US, but this was just a couple of guys, veterans, that understood that music and guitar in particular could help veterans with PTSD. And they started offering 10 free lessons to any veterans who needed it. And this thing just took off. It's gotten so much bigger. Gary Sinise is involved as a spokesperson. I mean, who would have thought coming at it from that direction to help a community in need? And just really meeting all these people, hearing their stories, they're usually deeply personal and they focus their lives on making an impact. It's energizing. That's what I love. So if you ask me my favorite part, it's so energizing on a daily basis. And I also get to meet people from all over the world, hear about their work, and often learn about issues that I didn't even know existed, like with T-Shed and Shafqat Alam. In my little corner of the world here, my little nice corner of the world, or dot North, I had no idea about the child poverty issues in India and the brag pickers and all that. So you get to learn so much. So seriously, if I do nothing else for the next few years, then just keep meeting these kind of change makers, I'll be fine.
I love that. It almost feels like a cliche when you say, "My favorite part is the people," but it's
Right.
so true. This sector just has the most brilliant humans attracted to doing this work, and their stories are incredible, and oftentimes, they don't even think of their stories as incredible, which is surprising, right? There's a deep humility in this sector that is beautiful, but also the marketer, the salesperson in me is frequently going, "This is brilliant. Like, how does everybody not know this?" It is okay. I think your why for why you do the work you do is a huge part of what has others excited to engage, excited to jump in. And Chef Cat's one of the coolest people I've met
Yeah.
as well. So much personality and passion in one person almost feels ridiculous. And he's a generational nonprofit
Right.
professional, right? His father's legacy that he's bringing forward into his own life, and what a commitment to that. And he's just one of, I don't even know how many. I probably should write it all down at some point. And I know around the dinner table, maybe your partner feels the same way. My kids and family and my husband are constantly going, "How do all these people exist?" Because most of us don't take the time to meet people like that on a regular basis. And so we're missing out on something incredible that a little bit of networking can really pump up your day.
Absolutely. And I met Shafqat through the Hive, but I like what you said earlier about they don't even know it or they don't talk about what they've done and their impact. I really think, unfortunately, right now with all the chaos and all the noise, it's really a time for the sector to just be unapologetically bold. Do not be quiet. Do
Yeah.
not be modest. Tell people what you're doing because it's a fight for attention, is really what it is. And there's so many incredible missions out there, but if they're not known, it's going to be hard to survive.
So this is a natural segue into the question I always ask, which is, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges of this sector? And you maybe are coming in from a cool lens too, with having had this long career outside of the sector and now being here.
Right. Let's see where to start. There's quite a few, but you know what? Hopefully, people understand that there's even more good stuff going on. But there are a few challenges in the sector, and I think it's kind of at a tipping point right now. There's so many small nonprofits. I've heard counts of hundreds of thousands globally tackling similar causes in slightly different ways, like I just talked about. But it's going to be tough for even the majority of them to survive if they're still clinging to the same old. So that's my main answer. The most challenging issue in the sector today is there needs to be change, and quick change, to keep up with the changing environment, the changing landscape of philanthropy, and all the crazy chaos. And too many of them are standing still, or worse, I like to say they're burying their heads in the sand, just hoping that things get better. And that ain't going to happen. There is
Mm.
such a need to shift away from old methods and get innovative. And innovative means in funding approaches, in partnerships, collaborations, community building, outreach. They need to flip that stupid overhead narrative on its head and fight for the right to build infrastructure that works and to secure unrestricted funding that's built on trust. What else? They need, you know what's a funny one? You talk about outside the sector, but nonprofits need to trust each other and work together more. And you don't see enough of that. They need to realize they bring so much to corporate partnerships and not come at those from a deficit. And they need to embrace the tools, whether that's AI or other automation tools, stuff that's going to make them more effective, maybe help counteract the resource issue. without sacrificing the most important part of the work, which is building relationships and understanding people's motivations. So I think to do that, they need to spend less time listening to outside voices and more time getting introspective and looking internally at the culture they need to create and the relationships they need to build to make that happen.
I think that's super insightful and just important that we focus in on that trust building perspective. And for anyone who doesn't already know this about Dan, he is a Hive Ambassador. It's been wonderful to work more closely with you. And he just facilitated a session for us recently about this exact topic, about this building trust, right? And that is a trust between nonprofits as well, which may be the thing we're often neglecting. And I wonder sometimes reputationally, because we know how important that is. And when people think about the sector, I feel that there's this external for-profit view that nonprofits, of course, they're like going out there and constantly collaborating on projects. And that has just not been my experience at all.
No,
A lot of stall out, right? Like things maybe start to get talked about, but we're underestimating the fact that maybe in the long run, a collaboration requires less resources from both nonprofits to build something bigger. But the initial investment is actually enormous. And when you already have a tapped out team, who owns that? Who takes on those responsibilities? And so I find a lot of collaborations very quickly don't actually come to fruition the way I think for profit imagines that they do.
I agree. I think the big ones, like the big global brand name nonprofits, are better at it because I've seen collaborations and partnerships between some of the known ones. I think the smaller ones are more hesitant. Maybe they've been burned in the past, but I think it's so necessary for them. And when I see it happening, it's great. I've seen We Are Love nonprofit with Phyllis, is a good friend of mine, and I introduced her to Hunter Beaton of Day One Bags. So they're both handling foster care issues in two different states, and they're helping each other. I mean, it just seems so natural, right? Why recreate the wheel?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And you've been now over a year in business, Philanthropy Fuel. And if some people aren't following your newsletter, it's fantastic. Love the content that you're putting out because it really speaks to me. And I find it's stuff that is not always being talked about in the sector because it does have that angle of going, yeah, there's business pieces we can take away for fundraising and for relationship building. But as you've started to move into this consultancy practice, how has peer support factored into that success and where you are at right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's nothing I really thought about in my past life until I started getting involved in the communities and everything. But it's actually twofold, I think. It's first how it's impacted me personally as I entered the space. Like you said, I was an outsider, right? And
Yeah.
second, what I found it's meant for the people that I'm trying to help, whether that's clients or just people that I've connected with and felt pulled to help them push their mission forward. Prior to retirement, I spent a couple of years building up a network on LinkedIn, thinking I was going to go into sales consulting or sales and marketing, coaching, things like that. And then I very quickly decided I didn't want to do that. And so I was starting from scratch, right? And from day one, I made a decision that everything I was going to do to build this business was going to be based on just genuinely connecting with people, growing the relationships that felt right. And nice thing is I get to choose, right? I get to be discerning in that. And then just engaging sincerely at every opportunity. So that started on LinkedIn, following some key people in the sector, learning from them, engaging in their content, and eventually taking those conversations offline, either video or I guess video is still online, but you know what I mean,
Yeah.
off of LinkedIn to something like this or live if they were local, and just starting to build relationships. And then I started slowly putting out my own content. The newsletter, as you mentioned, is a weekly newsletter, and I watched my little nonprofit circle start to grow just a little bit and spent a lot of time engaging. And again, took those connections and grew those relationships where it makes sense. And I jumped on all kinds of webinars and LinkedIn live sessions. As you know, I am very active in the chats, and that's created a lot more connections and opportunities. And it's been great. And all of a sudden, what you see as you're building these connections, collaboration opportunities start to present themselves, ideas flow, support flows, confidence grows. Maybe this is surprising to people based on my personality, but I had a lot of imposter syndrome throughout this. And I still get it occasionally, like, who am I to talk to someone about corporate partnerships in nonprofit, right? For that I've been doing this for 6 months or a year. But I've had some really experienced folks in nonprofit tell me that I was bringing a needed outlook to the sector, and that helped get me motivated. But I got to tell you, Tasha, that's for me personally the best outcomes that sometimes I didn't know about for weeks or months afterwards were on the nonprofits I was helping, they'd become part of that little unofficial community. We all have those.
Yeah.
And as I promoted their mission or asked for help, there were people in my network connecting with these founders and these leaders and collaborating on different things to help them. And I didn't even know about it until much later, which is fine. And I'd find out and say, this is so great. That's the beauty of networking and connecting. It's exponential, it's compounded, whatever term you provide. So it's had a profound impact on me as far as peer support personally and in my business and my brand, but it's allowed me to help nonprofit friends in ways that I really couldn't have imagined by just connecting different people and sometimes not even knowing about it.
I think there's something really important that networking, almost like sales, has a bad rap, right? People
Right.
use the word as something dirty, like you're only going into this with your own goals, your own things you're hoping for, that it's only extractive. But I always looked at sales when I was in sales as going, no, do I have something that's amazing that's going to help this client? Then great, we're a great fit and this is going to be a great partnership. But one of my biggest strengths was frequently going, "Oh, this is not right for you. The timing's not right, not the right product. Hey, this other team over here, this is the right team for you because we're not going to be able to support on X, Y, and Z level." And that's what really builds that trust component. And I think that's very similar when it comes to networking, is instead when you go into networking, imagining what you can give back to the person you're talking to, whether that's connections, whether that's a resource, whether that is just encouragement, because let's be honest, most of us need that in our day to day, especially if you're in a nonprofit. That's a huge gift. And gifts tend to find their way back around to you. And so, even when I started the Nonprofit Hive, but more largely when I've just seen how the networking effect works for people within the hive, it does compound, right? You participate, the people who've participated the most have absolutely gotten the most out of this. And that's so special. Like, I'm jazzed for them whenever they say to me, "Oh, this X, Y, and Z happened because of this small little introduction." And it took me less than 5 minutes to write a quick email. I know that those returns come back around to me as well. And I wish everyone looked at it that way, through that lens.
It's so great. And that's why I want to network not just with nonprofits. I like to talk to other
Yeah.
consultants. I like to talk to vendors that have cool products and stuff because if I can introduce them to someone that I'm trying to help, because my scope is kind of narrow, then you're more trusted and you're more helpful and you're just growing that ecosystem. It's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Now, my last question that I always finish up with is, what have you gotten out of being a member of the Nonprofit Hive? I know you've already highlighted a few things and people that you've had so far.
I have my Hive mug, by the way. So
Yay! Oh my goodness, that's
there
so
you go.
fun.
Truthfully, what I've gotten out of the Hive is opportunities. It's opportunities to build relationships, develop supportive friendships, to learn, to collaborate, to express my views, which I really appreciate, and to grow. You mentioned it when you and I first met. It was actually a few months before I launched Philanthropy Fuel, and I told you I would join the Hive right after I launched it because I felt I have to have a company before I start networking because I have to have something to talk about. And I think it was probably my first Hive conversation. I was like, I didn't need to wait. That was dumb. I could have started day one because you can talk about anything. You
Yeah.
get mixed up with people who have such a diverse backgrounds, experience, perspective. You can go anywhere with those conversations. I've joined other groups before in my prior life in sales and marketing, and even early on in this career, and LinkedIn groups, paid communities, things like that, and got very little fulfillment out of them. I found them to be hands off with very little engagement, very little structure. And I really hate to say it, but I think a lot of them existed so that their founders of that community could push their offerings, their thought leadership, their content. And it's really a turnoff. But I found day one, and I wish I remember who my first Hive. I remember my second Hive chat. I don't remember my first one. I got to look back. But day one, the Hive was different. The structure, the messaging, the vibe, the engagement. It really is a community, and that's what I was looking for. It's really what I needed. Yes, to grow, but let's be real. I left an environment in corporate where I was constantly interacting with all kinds of people every day, all year long, internal and external, some of whom I knew for decades. And then suddenly, boom, I'm on my own, right? And it can be lonely. So finding the nonprofit hive was huge for me. It gave me a sense of belonging. It felt like the right people, my people, which is why I got so involved and became such a proponent. And eventually was invited by you to be a Hive ambassador, which I both love, but I also take it very seriously because I want others to get the same benefits I have and understand that this is a different type of community building than what they may have been exposed to in the past. And I love our ambassador group. Just a great, fun, emotional, supportive group of people. It's a community within the community, which is just as important. And it's been rewarding to be a part of that. I have met just so many amazing change makers through the Hive, developed relationships, friendships. It just keeps growing. I've got more opportunities to be an advocate for the nonprofit sector, whether it's through writing, through articles, hosting LinkedIn Lives. We've got another one coming up in November on generational differences, real or hoax or whatever, something along those lines. It's a very satisfying and wild ride so far. So I cannot say enough good things about the Nonprofit Hive.
Well, thank you. And, the belief from others that there's something special happening here and that, yeah, I'm the founder, but you're probably not going to meet me, right? We're at that critical mass in terms of number of people that even if I take every time slot every Thursday, I'm still not
Right.
hitting even a small portion of members, but they are going to meet someone amazing like yourself. And your first chat was
Oh,
September 12th with Matt Ratz, who is a
oh yeah.
wonderful
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
similar person who's been very involved and hilariously perfect timing to do this little interview because this is your 50th chat this week.
Nice.
I know, exactly, right? So you've almost done a year's worth of conversations in the last year. Just your dedication and I just am so appreciative of similarly what you bring that is unique and I think we all bring something special to the sector that supports each other. We're just not always looking at it that way. And we leaning into the zone of genius for you, whether that's corporate fundraising, building corporate relationships, looking at fundraising from that different lens. That's so important because I don't think most nonprofits, that's a bit of an area of weakness for sure.
I agree. It's been a little bit of an eye opener, but it's created so many opportunities to help them in ways that maybe they didn't look at before. And part of it is just a mindset shift. Be confident in what you bring to a partnership. Don't come at this from a deficit. And like I
Yeah.
said earlier, for the nonprofits, be unapologetically bold and put yourself out there.
Love it. And how can people follow along with you, get in touch after they see this interview?
The easiest thing is jump on LinkedIn. As you know, I'm all over LinkedIn. I put out content most days and I'm always commenting and joining. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can send me an email at dan@philanthropyfuel.com. I'm around. I'm always around and I'm always willing to have conversations because you just never know when you talk to somebody what's going to happen.
Love it. All right. Thanks so much for doing this with me, Dan. And thanks for just being a supporter, cheerleader. Everyone should have a Dan Drucker in their corner at this point. So
Thank you, Tasha. Thanks for everything you do.